It was a mall that opened, with an intention of being like Granville Island in Vancouver, with a lot of potential, a lot of fanfare, a lot of buzz, and I think it's just after the first few years of its existence, it kind of just started going downhill, and it was like that for decades. So it was really important for me, living in the area, kind of growing up with the mall, to make sure I could capture that before they went away.
Where do you see the power in photography lying for you right now?
Something like this is important as a, historical, archival thing for people to kind of preserve their collective memories.
I should do a big clap. Ready? One more time. Okay. Hello. Welcome to the very first episode of my photography podcast. That is not the name of the podcast. It's currently unnamed. By the time you listen to this, though, I'm sure there will be a name that I've decided on. I don't know if you can even upload a podcast without a name yet, but we'll see. Yeah, welcome. My name is Jordon Hon, the host of this photography-based podcast. I am a 30-year-old working photographer based in my home city of Edmonton, Alberta, in so-called Canada. I have been here my entire life. My family originally is from the Hong Kong, southern China, Huainan province region of the world. But a lot of my family has immigrated to Canada throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I was born in the 90s. The reason why I said identify as a working photographer is because photography for the past 8 years or so has been my full-time thing, my full-time career. And it's something that I am obsessed about. I go to sleep thinking about photography. I wake up thinking about photography. It's really all-consuming. And I have many, many meaningful conversations with other photographers naturally that I just love having. And a lot of the times it's not recorded and it's not shared. And so I thought I would start this podcast. I know, another millennial dude starting a podcast, but I'm hoping to use this as a platform to spotlight and amplify and promote other photographers from my local community and surrounding areas about their tangible outputs of photography, whether it's a book, like in this first episode with Stephen Chan, or an exhibition, or a postcard subscription series, or, sometimes it can just be about the practice itself. But the big thing that I want to focus on with this show is the process and honoring and diving into the ups and downs of being a contemporary photographer in this modern age, and really dissect and ask the questions that maybe photographers might want to share answers to, things that they may be ruminating on, thinking about, struggling with, having enlightenment and epiphanies with, to share with an audience that might be interested. And so in this very first episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Stephen Chan, who is based in Calgary, down south in our neighboring and sometimes, most often actually, competitive city below Edmonton, below as in geographically, but I'm a proud Edmontonian. Anyways, I got to speak with Stephen virtually because he's down in Calgary and I'm up in Edmonton. But I got to meet Stephen down in Calgary just over a month ago on February 28th. And I know the exact date because that is the day that I decided to drive down to Calgary with my good friends and fellow photographers, Gary Sue and Chris Mercado. We took a road trip for a day, stayed one night, and we went down for the purpose of attending as much as we could of the Exposure Photography Festival, which is a festival all about photography that's been happening for, I think, around 10 years now. It started in Calgary. It is a province-wide photo festival, but because it started in Calgary, naturally, most of the programming, the exhibitions, the events, and the organizers are based in Calgary. And so I had never gone before. I had heard about it for a few years. I was always kind of just busy or making excuses of why I couldn't go down for the festival. But this year I thought, I really want to bring more community building, photography-based programming to my local community here up in Edmonton. And so I decided to commit and make the trip down to Calgary and check out the festival. The main reason why I chose that day out of the month-long festival, though, was because of the marquee evening event, which was an artist talk by a small photographer named Alec Soth. Small photographer is sarcastic, of course. I have many of his books behind me here in the shelf. I'm a really big Alec Soth fan. And I was really surprised and excited by the fact that he was brought out to Calgary in little old Alberta to talk about his work and his journey so far in a lecture / talk called How to Begin Again. And so, that happened in the evening at the Calgary Public Library. It was a beautiful talk, but this episode is not about Alex Soth and his talk. But Stephen and I met up for dinner right before the talk at Great Taste, a Chinese restaurant in Calgary's Chinatown. And we pretty much spent the whole evening together at dinner, at the talk, and then we went to go visit Neat Film Lab, which is Calgary's own independent film processing, developing beautiful community space where I got to meet Haley and Louie, the husband-wife duo who runs Neat Film Lab, and got to really, rub shoulders with some of the folks and really great folks in the Calgary photography community, which was sort of number one goal of the trip, was to meet as many people as I could down there. And so shout out to everyone I got to meet. You guys are awesome. And with Exposure Photo Festival, super, super respect the work and all the effort and love that I could tell was put into the festival with the various exhibitions and programming like critique nights or the Crit Club, artist talks like bringing Soth out, the outdoor public art installations that were really cool as well. Really, really cool stuff, really inspiring stuff. And I was already thinking about, like I mentioned before, trying to build more community photo-based things in Edmonton. I think a really common gap that photographers have identified when I talk with them over, the decade or so that I've been doing this thing is that the community is really siloed. There's not a lot of consistent programming that brings people out. So I've experienced myself and have heard from many photographers about the lack of, this buzzword of community, but it really does feel like you have to try so hard to be with like-minded photographers and talk, seriously about your work. It's easy to post things on Instagram. It's easy to build up a local following and follow other photographers on Instagram, but Instagram isn't really the platform that's conducive for genuine, deep feedback and constructive criticism and truly supporting, the journey that one takes into making work and creating a body of work that has a distinct voice, a distinct style, something meaningful and a narrative to share. And even when photographers get there, if they do, let's say through a book or an exhibition or something, the process is sometimes lost. And I've heard from many photographers that the process can be quite isolating and that they wish they had people to bounce ideas off of, to get that feedback and support along the way, so that the journey is more, is more enjoyable and more productive. And ultimately they're making work that I think is more connected to their local community and the audience that might be viewing it. So with all that said, this podcast is just one of the ways I'm hoping to sort of shape a more supportive and locally reflective culture of photography, because I personally know so many talented artists and photographers here, even just in Edmonton, that I would love to be able to dive into their process a bit more and share it with an audience. So that's kind of the point in all of this. On top of the podcast, I really want to host more workshops and artist talks, panel discussions, photo walks. I'm in my studio right now, which is located in the Ortona Armories building. It's run by Arts Habitat, and I've been here since September. And I love it here. This is a place that I've made a home for my art and for community building and portraiture work over the past 6 months now. And I really want to take advantage of the time that I'm here. And so I'm hoping to do more in-person podcast episodes in this space, as well as virtual ones when that's the only option, right? Like with Steven today. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, please subscribe. Please follow along. For now, I will be posting these episodes on my YouTube channel, which is Jordon Hon, Jordhon. I think I'll also be uploading the audio to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then I'll also be releasing clips on my Instagram, which is the same handle, Jordon, Jordhon. I don't think I'm going to start another brand for the podcast as of right now. It's a lot of work, and I already have way too many social media accounts. So I'm just going to host everything through my personal pages for now. But please, if you have ideas for future episodes, if you have recommendations for local photography or photographer guests that you think I should have on, please send me a message or comment wherever you are listening to this. I really want this podcast to serve the local, let's call it prairie region of Western Canada, America, to be locally reflective, definitely going to be very Edmonton-based. Yeah, so a little bit about Steven before I dive into the episode. I'm going to read his bio first from his book here. It's hard holding this mic and trying to hold a book, but... Okay, so Steven Chan is a photographer based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. He has a degree in Geomatics Engineering from the University of Calgary and has exhibited at Contemporary Calgary, the Workland Centre, the New Gallery, and the Alberta Society of Artists in Calgary. And so, yeah, as mentioned earlier, I met Steven just recently and got to pick up a copy of his book, Eau Claire Nowhere, a photographic deconstruction of a dead mall. I picked it up at the Contemporary Calgary Center's gift shop, where the main Exposure Photo Festival exhibition was happening. I had already heard about this project through social media. I believe Steven and a few other artists had done an exhibition about this mall, Eau Claire Market, at the New Gallery prior to the release of this book. And so Steven got to exhibit some of his photos and and work with other artists to present and engage with the community all about stories and memories of this mall that no longer exists. So yeah, this book, Eau Claire Nowhere, is the main reason why I reached out to Stephen, and it's the main central subject of our conversation. I'm excited to share the episode. I learned a lot about Stephen's origins of photography, where the idea came from for this book, and a bit about the process of not only making the photographs, but making the book, designing it himself, sequencing the images, and the collaborators that helped him along the way. So yeah, this intro is probably going to be way longer than future episodes, but I hope you guys are excited for the conversation. I'm excited for this podcast. Here's Stephen Chan and our conversation about Eau Claire Nowhere. We can talk more about that for sure. But yeah, why don't we get officially started? Thank you,
Sure.
Stephen, for agreeing to be my first guest on this unnamed, yet to be named photography podcast.
It's an honor. Yeah, I'm really glad you reached out, and just from meeting you the one time, we have so much to talk about and share and learn from our different experiences. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Definitely. Yeah. I think when I picked up your book, Eau Claire Nowhere, I had heard a little bit about the project, mainly through the New Gallery. I'd seen some things on Instagram because I followed Danny, our mutual friend, and thought it was interesting. I just thought that documentation of this mall and malls in general. I think I might have mentioned this to you in person in Calgary, but like there's been recent conversations in Edmonton about our West Edmonton Mall and how that's, inevitably been changing over the years, and obviously through pandemic and our shared cold winters, it being just this like haven and its own ecosystem. And there's been some art and exhibitions and writings and photography projects about our mall up here in Edmonton over the past couple years. So I was already kind of thinking about this. I read this book called Big Mall by Kate Black as well. And Kate's originally from Edmonton. I knew her from Edmonton. I think she's now in Vancouver. And that was a few years ago too. So as soon as I saw your project, I was like, yeah, like malls, there's so much to talk about. I think as a photographer, there's so much stuff to kind of observe and photograph and like be interested in as well. So I knew I had to pick it up. We got to meet in Calgary, albeit briefly, right, for about half a day, maybe just the evening actually at dinner, and then for the stuff afterwards. But yeah, I remember I told you before I left that I'm excited to get into your book and let you know what I think. So I'm glad that this can be the medium that I let you know what I think and that I can learn a bit more, because yeah, it was such a joy flipping through this book. It was really busy when I came back from the trip, and so I didn't really get to properly look at it until the following weekend. But I was in my studio, I set up some good lighting, as I do when I flip through a book for the first time, and yeah, it was so great to like not know anything really about the project. I've never been to this mall before. I'm not from Calgary, and I'm just never really heard about this mall. Since I have this book, some friends of mine have said that they've been there before and they've heard about it, right? So I've been enjoying sharing the book with them. But to flip through this and see familiar scenes, but unfamiliar, of course, and to soak in the sequence and let each photo really hit me for the first time was such a great experience. And I'm sure like a shared experience when you get a photo book for the first time. Nothing is like it, right? It's like you wish you could relive that moment again, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I'm probably the most interested to hear from people who know nothing about the mall. Like talking to Calgarians, there's so many people with like this, collective memory of the place, and it's always the same feelings too, because it was a mall that opened, with an intention of being like Granville Island in Vancouver, with a lot of potential, a lot of fanfare, a lot of buzz, and I think it's just after the first few years of its existence, it kind of just started going downhill, and it was like that for decades. So it had this reputation of just being this weird kind of failed dead mall, but it just kept chugging along for long past it was probably meant to be. But with it being demolished, there was still a lot of sadness around that, even though this was never a successful business. People still miss it and the character it had because it was so unique to everything around it. Like it wasn't like a bland, sterile, forgetful place. You remember the mall because it was so unique. So it was really important for me living in the area, kind of growing up with the mall, to make sure I could capture that before it went away.
Yeah, and so that's a really good kind of teaser into what I want to talk about with the book. But before we get into this specific project, you kind of just mentioned about growing up by the mall and having some experiences. Do you mind sharing a bit about your background and how you got started in photography? Maybe we'll start there.
Sure, yeah. I'm born and raised in Calgary. Family is Chinese immigrants. They initially came over actually the 1910s. Like two of my relatives paid the head tax to come in, and then worked here. Brought the family over in the 60s when they opened the immigration up from Hong Kong, and I started getting into photography probably when I was in university, just kind of as like a photographer for the student society. Took engineering at the University of Calgary. Started shooting, I think, seriously with the original Fuji X100. I took that on a trip to Europe, and that's kind of where I started to really fall in love with it, and learned how to shoot, and just kind of developed an eye for just, traveling and surroundings and environments. So my photography really gravitates towards architecture and street and landscape, and it's kind of the built human environment, how people kind of design spaces for themselves and how those spaces kind of evolve over time. So a project like this, documenting a mall as it was, dying, was really something that kind of just was in my wheelhouse when I chose to capture this. And I think since COVID is when I really started to get deep into my photography career, and almost exclusively shoot on film now. I sold all my digital gear except for one camera, and the process of just shooting film is just much more deliberate and slower and intentional. So I've decided to stick with that for most of my work.
And from what you told me and what's in your bio, you're an engineer, right? Can you tell me a bit about how that came to be, and like in sort of a career, and how that kind of parallels with your photography practice?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of crossover between engineers and photography. I think it's just having like a mechanical toy to play with is part of that. My engineering specialization is geomatics engineering. So this is related to like mapping, surveying, navigation, any kind of spatial data. So I look at maps pretty much all day at my day job, and that kind of gives me an appreciation for one thing, for like the aesthetics of a map and designing a map and being able to communicate to someone looking at it, the relationships between things and how to go from point A to point B, and how to organize things that are clear and deliberate so people basically know how things are related to other things in a spatial environment, in a spatial plane, basically. So I think that's kind of translated to the photography that I do, because I'm looking at, again, spatial relationships, whether it's between the person and the environment or between things in the environment. And again, how those things change over time, or how people abandon them or develop them. I also prefer to shoot photos without people in them, because I think the spaces kind of speak for themselves, and then the viewer can kind of insert themselves into that space.
That's super interesting how you're like your career in being an engineer and looking at spaces does parallel directly with the work that you're really interested in with photography. I don't know. I think that's interesting because I've met, I think, more people with the opposite, where it's almost like they like that juxtaposition between their day job and then what they do as a photographer. But it seems like you're all about spaces. You're all about, humans interacting with spaces and planes and architecture and all of that. That's really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was never much of a people person, so I was always more interested in just observing, what's around me, and photography is a way of exploring that in a different way than what my day job does.
I guess, like, would you say that if you're not a people person in your photography, the presentation of the photography and the conversations that come from that, from your work, do you think that's when you kind of fill your cup with the social part of your life and you enjoy that more?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like, because my job is very technical, so photography lets me speak to something that is definitely more emotional and more social. Especially how I can communicate your art to somebody. It has to be, through a social kind of context. Yeah, I think that kind of the way they kind of complement each other is definitely been beneficial for me.
I want to kind of zoom out a little bit in terms of, like, you say you're born and raised in Calgary, and then you've been a photographer for many years, and primarily shooting on a film, and now you have this project out and you've exhibited. Like, being an Edmontonian, born and raised Edmontonian, few hours north of you, I have many thoughts around the Edmonton photo scene. So I'm curious about your thoughts around. You can be as specific as you want, or in general, about the Calgary's photo scene in your experience.
Yeah, so I started getting involved through the Exposure Photography Festival, which is, kind of throughout southern Alberta, but it's mainly based in Calgary. I applied in 2022 for that edition, and that was the first thing I ever applied to submit my work to. And I was, lucky enough to get into their emerging photographer showcase. So it was, still right in the middle of COVID, smaller scale, but a lot of it was online. But I still managed to get my work exhibited in Contemporary Calgary, the art gallery down here, which used to be our old science center. So I have memories of that place too, as that's changed over the years, and I'm glad it's something useful and it suits the space really well. But yeah, that's how I initially got involved, and the Exposure Festival has a lot of events that support the artists that are participating. So we did like portfolio reviews, and that was really my first chance to talk to professional photographers and curators and gallerists about my work, and have to think about how to put this in the context of what I want to do as an artist, because I hadn't really even considered that before. Like I said, when I started photography, it was just, as a hobby and just like travel photography and just shooting what interests you, but you haven't really developed a narrative or a sense of style yet that you can, call your own. So that was an important stepping stone into getting more involved with the community here, and having been able to meet other artists like Louis Villanueva, who was in that same year as me. That's how I got to know him, and he's developed a few rolls of film before I started doing it myself, and then he went on to start Neat Film Lab, which is just growing at an incredible rate, and also connecting people down in Calgary. You meet a lot of the same faces, and you get to know them, and you get to know their work in Calgary. And we've got the camera store here is a great kind of little hub for photographers in town. And you and I were both at the Alex Soth presentation, and he said that having a store like that, that's what it used to be. That's when pre-digital is we'd have these camera stores, and with all the gear, all the film, they host events, and it's really a supportive and educational community down here, and it's pretty much been growing constantly since I've been part of it. Got in touch with a lot of very experienced people photographers like George Weber. He's a very renowned, Calgary photographer. He teaches the darkroom class at SAIT, which is our technical college. I don't know if you have a similar class at NAIT, but if you do, like, highly recommend just going into a darkroom, just learning how to just create something with your hands, and seeing the image appear in front of you is always like kind of like magic, basically. So yeah, I kind of been rambling on different tangents, but this is just because the photography community here is so rich, and I'm really glad to have met so many people through it.
Yeah, I will say, like, grass is always greener on the other side. I when I came down to Calgary with Gary and Chris, like, I know we were really excited just to soak it up and see the differences, and also experience, what a photographer might get to enjoy in Calgary. And I think, like, the fact that you got your start with kind of thinking about your work more seriously in a narrative driven way from exposure, I think just is a testament to the value of that kind of festival and those kind of programs and resources for photographers who, take the craft, want to take their craft to the next level. So that's amazing. And I know that I will definitely be, thinking about ways of bringing that sort of energy into the Edmonton photo scene too. And this is kind of like even part of what I want to do with this show, is to connect us more and learn about photographers' stories. And I love long form ways of, listening to interviews and learning about photographers and how they think about their work and how they got their start, and challenges too. So yeah, I'm really happy to hear, like, the camera store, and with exposure, and with mentors like George Weber, and the classes, like, that's pretty strong. And I think a lot of other major cities might also be envious of that. So not to say don't take it for granted, but I'm like the shared appreciation for the things that are happening in Calgary. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. We've got like photo clubs. Like there's another one called the Alcove. They host photo walks, like probably I want to say a couple times a month, and they do print exchanges. And for those kinds of places, you get people of all kinds of experience, from people just starting out in photography to people who have been doing it for years. So yeah, it's just a really supportive community.
Eau Claire Nowhere, a photographic deconstruction of a dead mall by Stephen Chan. Please walk me through the origins of this project, and how the first time that you thought about maybe, starting to document this mall.
Yeah, so the story of the project is the city was planning for years to build out a new LRT line, the Green Line, and this would have gone from south to north, kind of bisecting the city down the middle. So Eau Claire is kind of right in that path, and the mall's had many redevelopment attempts over the years that just never came to fruition. So it was supposed to be condos at one time with this big multi-million-dollar project, but that was right before one of the recessions hit us, so it went nowhere. And the Green Line was really supposed to be the final nail in the coffin for it. So they were going to tear down the mall and turn it into a new station that was going to tunnel through underground and come up by the river and cross the river and go north, closer to the airport. So they announced in January of 2024 that the mall would be closing at the end of May. And when that announcement came out is kind of when the idea in my head, even though I should say that I live and work right next to the mall, like I'm a block away in either direction. So I was walking by it every day, and when you see something every day, it just kind of fades into the background. I would have maybe gone in there for lunch to the food court now and then, or there used to be a Good Life gym. I would work out there sometimes, but other than that, and the movie theater there, you'd kind of show art house movies. It would host the International Film Festival in Calgary, but other than that, it was not like a must-go visit destination in town. It was just this relic of the early 90s that just failed and kind of just stuck around much longer than it had any right to, really, with a bunch of weird businesses that also lasted for decades and when you talk to other people about Eau Claire, it's like, is that place still around? How is that still open? And it's such a weird vibe. But yeah, I kind of realized they had limited time to preserve it before it was gone forever. So just I could be there every day and kind of just watch how it slowly emptied out and kind of died, and I could also capture it as it was being demolished and what that felt like in the context of the mall's history.
Yeah. Yeah, because I love how your book, this is kind of zooming out a little bit from the book right now. It surprised me how little of the demolition is actually in the book. It was really only like at the very, very end. And I think when I picked this up and I read the foreword and I kind of saw the front cover image which does have a little bit of demolition, right, going on. I assumed it would be a bit more of that, and maybe it would be more of like documenting and capturing the like that actual destruction and that actual like violence that's like happening to this structure, and so I don't know if I was pleasantly surprised, but I was surprised that a majority of the book was actually exterior interior shots of the mall when it's actually still in operation. And I think that journey that you took us on through the sequence of things hits harder when the demolition comes. It almost reminded me of like those movies where something terrible is going to happen because it's in the plot, and you're watching the whole movie and something terrible is happening, blah, 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 and you're like, when is it going to happen? And then it's like the final scene where it's like, and like to me it's like, oh, that means like it's kind of like the book and the story wasn't really about that destruction. It was more about that journey to the destruction and all the emotions and other plot lines that might have happened and other thoughts that you might have while you're looking through the sequence. So I did love that. I just wanted to let you know, when I finished the book, I thought about that and that was a surprise. But yeah. I want to ask you about the process of photographing the mall. So you have the timeline in the forward here, right? From January 2024 to its closure on May 31st. And then its subsequent demolition over the next year. How often were you there? What was that process like for your daily routine? When did you decide to go? And was it structured, or was it kind of a spontaneous kind of decision?
So like I said, I walk by it every day to go to work. So I pretty much had a camera on me just while I was going to work, and I could kind of dip out or capture it as I was coming home and whatever was convenient to me. So again, it was pretty spontaneous. I got permission from the property manager of the mall, Harvard Developments. So I sent them an email and told them about the project, and yeah, they said it was okay. That pretty much just enabled me to just have a tripod in there and not be bothered by security, because a lot of people had the same idea. You saw a lot of photographers there in the last couple of months. Like, we're like vultures. We see a dying mall. You're gonna get people who want to shoot it. But that got me into the parkade and the theater, and I didn't shoot so much in the back rooms because they didn't want me to bother the staff, so kind of kept it to the public spots. But yeah, I was there during the day, evenings, weekends, just whenever I felt like it, really, because I was just kind of focused on shooting the same things over and over again, and either seeing how my eye changed or seeing how the space changed and being able to compare that. So throughout the book, you'll see a couple of before and after shots of the same businesses, like while they were still open and then after they closed, and the juxtaposition of that.
Which I absolutely loved, by the way. So I've been carrying this book around for the last couple of weeks, ever since I picked it up. And when I'm meeting with friends and stuff, I'll show them, even like non-photographers. I'm just like, because this subject matter is, I think, very universal, right? Everyone's been in a mall before, and everyone kind of can understand what this story is about. It's very simple, right? And so I've been, 2 before and afters. I've been showing them, of course, the amazing like aerial shot that you have in the beginning and the end, which I guess I should share with the audience, right?
Right.
It's like there, and then I flip to the back, and it's like such just like a stark like boom, right? Like it's completely gone. It's wild. But then the other one that I absolutely love that I wanted to tell you is the the Tai Chi cuisine Chinese food court restaurant, but
Right.
more so than like the stark, the playground on the left side and then the restaurant, and then if I can flip to the next shot here, right? So from here to here. More than that, I think I really enjoyed how much of other photos you shared in between. And I think it's you easily could have put, the playground shot next to the demolished playground shot, or the food court shot next to that shot. So walk me through kind of the sequencing of this book and how that process was like, because I really enjoyed that. It's almost like when where you're watching a movie and then you see a familiar scene, you're like, wait, why do I remember that, right? And so I enjoyed that, but tell me about your thoughts.
Yeah, the sequencing was by far the hardest nut to crack when it came to putting the book together. I talked to a lot of people about it to get their opinions on how exactly to make it work, because I had a lot of ideas going through my head, and some of them clashed with each other. Like I shot many rolls of film on infrared, black and white, of after the mall closed as it was getting demolished. And my idea was that was like, I shoot in color while the mall is open, and then I shoot in black and white while the mall is closed, and kind of have that. But once you lay it out, it's very jarring, and it's kind of harder to maybe communicate that idea. And the mall itself is so colorful that even as it was getting torn down, I didn't want to lose that either, because it was almost too stark of a difference. So that was one idea I had to drop, was anything black and white. And then as far as the before and after goes, I did think about putting them, as you said, right next to each other, because then you get an immediate comparison, an immediate, emotional reaction to something like that. But it was more important for me to kind of arrange the layout, both geographically, again, based on kind of my background, and chronologically. So you do get the progression of the mall with some life in it, and then slowly filtering out, and until you get to just emptiness. So having an earlier part in the book with it still, occupied, and then you coming back to the same thing later, I think ties the narrative together in much stronger when you go beginning to end throughout the book.
Yeah, I honestly love the sequence so much. I when I was flipping through this book, being a photographer myself, I put myself in your shoes, and I was imagining like I was Steven walking around with a tripod and like going through this really empty mall and like setting up for compositions, and really like, I'm sure like taking your time with soaking up like all the little details you were seeing, right? Because you knew you were going to document. I guess like I also had a question about, did you know that you would be turning this project into a book or a presentation, or were you, because I know on your website you seem to document these kind of things all the time. So was it from the intention at some point in the beginning that it would be a book?
I say the first time I started talking to people about it and asking them about it, it wasn't really a book yet. I knew I wanted to shoot the mall, but I just didn't know what kind of form it would take until maybe it was a month or two into it. And then I decided on a book, because I love photo books. I buy them constantly. I've filled up so much space with them. And it's, I think, easier to show, like I said earlier, it's easier to show people your work, like a large volume of your work, through a book than it is through prints or through, and it doesn't have the same impact on social media or a website as you get from having something physical in your hands that you can kind of go through at your own pace and soak it up, as you want to. So I landed on a book because I thought I'd probably be designing a book at some point in my career, so I might as well adapt this project into that.
You might as well like take this cohesive story, because it's all the same subject, and turn it into a book and try, right? Am I right to say that this is your first publication?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I also applied for a grant through Calgary Arts Development for it. And again, my first grant, my first application for one. So I was very lucky to get that support as well.
Only downhill from here. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's amazing. Gosh, so many questions, but I think the next thing I want to kind of get into is like, like this is a big question with storytelling with any art medium, but was there something you were trying to say? Was there something you were trying to say with the sequence, with the things you chose to point your camera at, the way you photographed it, and the way you presented it?
Yeah, I would say my style's very objective. I mentioned George Weber before, but I'm a self-taught photographer, so I don't have the academic kind of background to place a lot of context in. But what I do know is he compared my style to the Dusseldorf School of Photography, and if you look them up, they do a lot of I think the word is topologies of like industrial structures shot very objectively. Again, without any people, just to kind of compare these buildings with each other, and so my style is very straight on, very geometric, and I try to shoot kind of detached from any kind of personal emotion. I think it's important for me to get people to project what they feel onto the images. And again, just relating to my engineering background, I just like the straight lines, the curves, the shapes in a composition. So that's what I aim for, and then that tends to lend itself to a lot of still, static, kind of peaceful, empty spaces.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see like the precision with the way you compose, which is really great. And I think it lends to like this format of a book too, because books, for the most part, pages are very straight lined, and so when you place something in there, there's this satisfaction when things are lined up, and you really get to. I think when things are lined up, for me, it takes away the distraction of trying to physically balance and like. I guess like orientate yourself around the image, and then you can focus on the colors and the text and the things that you see, and start to place yourself there a little bit easier than if things were not as geometric and composed. So I really enjoyed that way of flipping through the book. And I want to say that your book also has a lot of humor in it, and I wasn't sure if that was intentional, but you caught things, like the words farewell on the poster, right? And I can kind of flip to that there, right? It's a farewell celebration, but also the more subtle ones are the ones in the theater for sure, in terms of sometimes I think about dying. That being the movie that you kind of captured there. There was also the what I'm getting at now, the one where the end, right? Where was that? Is that further along? What is that
Maybe.
one? I think so, right? Oh yeah, right here. If I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, right? I love that. Is this also, was that also a movie, or is that just a quote?
It's a quote from, I believe, The Truman Show. So this Cineplex, they had these two boards, and the one on the outside shows you what's playing, but the one on the inside is like always a goodbye quote from a different movie. So there was a bunch of them that I could have used for that.
Was that intentional from the theater to be putting these sort of farewell messages?
I think it was just kind of something they did for people leaving after they saw a movie, and they did have a different one when they closed. I forget which one that was. It might have been "That's All, Folks" or something like that. Any kind of, the humor is definitely intentional, because I think there's definitely something to be said about having levity for something like this, where you're mourning it, but there's also the quirkiness of the mall itself that I think is best communicated through that kind of humorous juxtaposition of things.
Yeah. These shots in the theater itself are incredible. I think there's this whole project really, I felt, at some points, yeah, the humor, the appreciation for the photography, thinking about the sequence, but also like this frustration. And I think the frustration for me came from this kind of cliche like phrase of like, why can't we have and keep these nice things, like why do we have to move on from all this investment and memory and experiences in these places that obviously took human effort and money to create, and people have had many, I'm sure, positive experiences in these malls, and to see the destruction for me, especially from like that drone shot in the beginning to the very end, is like, it's like, come on, right? Can we not continue and repurpose versus flatten, destroy, remove, and rebuild, And so just wanted to make that comment. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, if you felt any frustration too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think, Calgary and Edmonton are both fairly young cities, and we don't do a good job of preserving our history. Like right now, the old Bay Building in downtown Calgary is this very iconic early 20th century structure. It's this kind of architecture that, again, being young, we don't have much of. It's got these beautiful archways and this tiled walkway, and it's not a protected heritage building in Calgary for whatever reason. They never applied for it, and a developer could easily just scoop it up and just tear the whole thing down, and we'd lose a major part of our history. So even though a mall like Eau Claire is, much more garishly designed and much more dated, it's still, losing a very visual impact on, downtown Calgary and the community. So again, like even though it was never successful, they never bothered to redevelop it or modernize it. But that's kind of why it had so much charm, because it stayed the way it was for so long.
Absolutely. And like, I think if I had to guess and do a survey, I think most people would have appreciated the old vintage, design of the mall, rather than think, no, I want something new and shiny here, right? I think from my perspective that would be in the minority, because it's more rare, especially in downtown Calgary, to see the old and the preservation of the old,
Yeah. Well, to use an example, I went to Las Vegas when I was a kid. Like year 2000 was the first time I went, and so many of the hotels down there are themed, right? And they were built during a time where Vegas tried to market itself more to families, but that meant all the resorts had a lot of individual character. And then when I went back a few years ago, so much of that is gone. It's just been stripped away to be, sterile and corporate and very generic. And it's just such a shame to lose all that intention just for something that is lifeless, really.
That it's so cookie cutter and, replaceable. Before I moved on from the humor thing, I actually really wanted to ask about something that's a bit more subtle and cultural, which was this image on the right here, which I love. Like, I love the symmetry. I love that the now playing poster is nothing and it's just a backlight. But I also love that you chose to photograph the number 4. And as you know, in Chinese, 4 means death. Was that intentional or not?
Yes. Probably, yeah. Because there were a number of theaters I could have shot, but like you said, 4 is death. There's the other sign about, sometimes I think about dying. So it is a very undercurrent of death in the book, and also when you see the sphinxes in the parkade in that cage, it was like kind of venturing into a tomb. Yeah. I don't know if that's probably later on in the book. I think after the theater. But yeah, there's this sense of, you're kind of on an archaeological journey too. You're discovering these little relics of what people left behind, and inside that cage with the sphinxes, which are, I should give some more context here. There's a store called Son of the Pharaoh that sold these Egyptian statuettes and knickknacks, and
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I always remember about the mall is this how this store managed to survive for so long, because I don't know how high in demand having a King Tut or the statue of Anubis in your house is, but they have a second location. They're still going on.
Wow.
But yeah, just finding those, and as I was down there, was like felt so apt for this project. Like it's something historical. And even in that cage, I found some pages of rap lyrics, which is just really funny to.
There are so many little details in this book. I don't want to ruin them all for everybody, so I'm not going to point out everything that I saw, because I think it's such a, a fun experience too, to sort of, like you said, like have these maybe like Easter eggs or things in there that you might have spotted that you wanted to subtly include. And that's the great thing about quality printing and a book, is that you can, get closer and see these details and appreciate the sequence that you presented to us. Kind of my last couple of questions here is like, maybe I'll focus on sequence first. How difficult, or if not how easy was it to decide on the cover image and the back cover image, and maybe even the very first photo that people see, which is I would say I would skip this one, but maybe this very first image here, and then the very last image, which is this shot here. Like, how difficult is that decision?
Yeah. The cover was always up in the air. I kind of settled on this shot because it's kind of an action image. You get that drama right off the bat. I could have easily picked one while the mall was still intact, and it would have, I think, maybe just been a little bit less direct in communicating what the book was about, because it was important for me to have the destruction as part of the sequence and not just be preservation of what the mall used to be. So I have many shots of that entrance in very different formats and stages, but this one kind of was just the most direct. The back image was always difficult. I really had no idea what to put there for a long time, but again, settled on something a little ironic. It's the info board that was sitting there for years, and there's no information on it. It's just a map of the mall, and I think the other thing is a poster of that farewell celebration, and that's kind of all you need to know. This project wasn't intended to be like academic information about what the mall was throughout the years. I linked to a bunch of news articles at the end for people who wanted to know more, but for my scope, it was really just this snapshot in time. And as far as the first and last image as well, so the aerial one is to provide context of the mall as a whole, and that was actually shot from my office, so because everything in here is shot on film, so I was lucky to be in a position where I could just go to a window and take a shot looking down. But the next one, the opening shot of that sign was up there the entire time the mall was standing, up until they tore it down. So again, it's kind of the irony of advertising that rentals are available for a mall that was on life support and going to close in a matter of months. And that ties into the last shot as well, because they're both evening shots. Something I kind of wish I did shoot more was shots of it at night, but I think having these kind of tie them, bookend the book literally, kind of spoke to the sunset of the mall's life, really.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, no, I think actually all the daytime stuff hit me harder, because people can go to the mall in the evening, but I always associate malls with like a weekend outing, morning, afternoon, the sun spilling in, and I think you really captured that. How was the bookmaking process for you in general? This is your first publication. I saw that you printed through Mixam, the online printer. I've used them too before. Their quality is great, and I think like their service in my experience have been really good too. But for you, like, how was it making your first hardcover book?
So with something like Mixum, it's nice because you can pick your paper stock. You can choose hardcover or softcover. You can have little extras like the binding. I picked some little color just to kind of tie in with the mall's colors, the red and yellow. Maybe a reprint might choose like a blue and white or something. But you can choose the paper stock for an art book. It's good to go with the thicker paper stock. A lot of customization options. As far as like the book length, it was again down to the sequencing. You didn't want to overstuff it, but also didn't want it too thin either. I think it took a little longer to get the books in than I would have liked, but I ordered around Christmas time, so it would have been busy. So the printing was delayed, and then also the delivery truck, I think, rolled over or something. So all the boxes when I got them were heavily damaged. Luckily, the books themselves were in one piece, but it was a bit of a hairy situation for a little while. It was a good learning experience. I know you didn't ask about the design, but I designed it all in Adobe InDesign, so I had to teach myself that. And you kind of just get a PDF out of that. Mixum has their own template. You can follow just for an easy upload. And the cover is designed separately from the interior, and it'll place it all together in order for you. And I think I ordered one test print, which is where I can kind of finalize decisions. So originally I had page numbers, and it was more for reference, but that was the first thing that had to go was page numbers, because too distracting, and it's harder to kind of lose yourself in the book, I think, when you have that kind of forcing you along. And also my fonts, I had to adjust the size on those. They were way too big at first, and you get a lot of good experience just from making a test print and seeing what works.
Totally. I guess the decision to not have any descriptions for any of the images.
They're definitely not arranged chronologically, because I wanted the freedom of not having to do that. It's just easier to place the images where they felt appropriate. I just start with, you can kind of see some snow on the ground in a lot of the shots. It's like melting, so I did try to keep those together contextually, because like I said, I started this in January, ended it in May while the mall was open, so they kind of fit themselves into that order.
The melting, the great melt, which we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
A year later. How has been the reception from quote unquote audience or readers when you do, when you had your book launch, and when you talk to people that have flipped through it? Have you learned anything from that sort of feedback?
So one thing I did donate a copy of this book to the City of Calgary Archives, and they were very, happy to accept it. So to have that as part of official historical documentation of the city is a great honor for me. But talking to people, like I was at an art market last night, and they got a lot of the same collective feelings from people's nostalgia of the place, and people who were there when it first opened, and how excited they were, and how much potential it had, and just this kind of sadness of losing that. A lot of people thanked me for doing this, because without it, they might not have had anything of it, because a place like this, if you take it for granted, really. And I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't even thought to have kind of preserved any of that, because it was a failure, but also something that people really connected to.
It's interesting. I feel like whether this was intentional or not, you did a service for people's nostalgia and memories. And the fact that you did wide shots like this, as in addition to really close-up detail shots, I think, like, from a very objective, experience, like someone could actually be like, I remember having a memory right there, you know, like I remember sitting at that table and like fighting with my boyfriend or whatever, right? Like you can literally see the whole space and be able to relive moments. And I think yeah, whether that was intentional or not, to get both wide and tight and all that, I think that when you present it in a book about a specific space like this, inevitably people are going to appreciate and probably love that you did that, you know?
Yeah, and I want to mention before you were familiar with some of this through the new gallery. So in last year, 2025, myself, Danny Long, Brady Fullerton, and Jessica Zito, we had a show there about the mall. It was Eau Claire. And that was really a good opportunity to get people to contribute their own emotions, their own memories to this shared space. And when we were kind of designing the sequencing there, we didn't put any of the demolition photos in there because it was meant to preserve what people remembered, and we had a board where people could write down, make collage of their memories, and you could read that, you could go through that. A lot of really interesting, funny, bizarre things that people always remember. That was important for me to help with the sequencing as well, because I was able to get feedback from Danny and Brady and Jessica on what photos didn't work and what did. Because I think overall I shot about 750 photos for this project, and there's maybe 80 something in the final book.
Wow. Mm-hmm. I wanted to say, like, yeah, that I didn't even think about that experience with the new gallery being such a useful experience for you to see what pictures landed with people or didn't, and then moving on to the book phase, because like a sequence in a book is so much more limited than doing a presentation or doing a slideshow or having all these prints, right? It's much more like you gotta make, it's like crunch time decisions when it comes to limited pages and printing and the cost associated to that. So yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that's maybe something that people could take away, is like that critique and that feedback or that presentation before you commit to the publication. Wow, yeah. So Stephen, thank you for sharing all this. The final thing I kind of wanted to end off on, and maybe this will be kind of sort of a reoccurring kind of ending for these episodes, is the idea that I talked about earlier about storytelling and sort of where you see the power of the medium of photography in this day and age, you know, considering what you do, how this book went, maybe your future projects. Where do you see the power in photography lying for you right now?
Yeah, I think the world is so chaotic right now that photography is a way for me to capture how I'm feeling, how I'm seeing the world, what is important to me. It's helpful to just kind of preserve that, like moments in time, and as my career develops, I can kind of see how that evolves from my perspective and how I can share that with people. Something like this is important as a historical, archival thing for people to kind of preserve their collective memories, but also to be able to communicate what my own feelings are on why this is important, and the stories that we can tell just from images, because so much of our world changes so quickly, that having something to guide people through that and place things in context is just really something that only photography can do.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I think that's super powerful. I think it's like a reminder that photography, in the way that it does snapshot moments in time, can be of service of not only ourselves, but sharing it with others, and being a tool for, like you said, collective memory, and therefore strengthening our relationships, strengthening our ties to place and land and connections with other humans. And I think you did it really beautifully in this project. So thank you for chatting about it and sharing so much, and putting up with my disjointed first interview experience questions and questioning and line of thoughts. I know it's a little bit all over the place, but thank you. And I want to give you a chance now at the very end to either, shout out collaborators that helped you with this, or shout out your own socials and where people can find your work, or maybe upcoming projects. Just have at it. This is kind of like your ending, so yeah, please share.
I definitely want to thank, as I mentioned, Danny, Brady, and Jessica. They're all incredible artists in their own right. And I think Jessica has a continuing project about the mall as well that she's working on. And our styles really just all melded together really well for that gallery show. I think in the book I also thanked George Weber. He's been around in the Calgary photography scene for decades, and he has some incredible photo work documenting Alberta and southern Alberta. Learned a lot from him. I also thanked in there Sanya Lukács and Beth Kane. They're involved with the arts community here, and they've really gave me a lot of legs up when I started out. They were both involved with exposure. So I just got a lot of good mentorship and advice from them. And yeah, for my socials, you can follow me on Instagram at Activision. My website is stevenchan.photography, so paid for that special domain name. And what's coming up? That's a good question. I feel like I'm done with Eau Claire, so I'll try and just see what speaks to me next, and it might be another book, might be a zine. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes I hate that question, especially finishing off with it. It's like, why don't you just focus on what I did? And I don't know what I'm doing next.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate it again, Steven. Man, yeah, that's it. Thank you. And I appreciate you shouting out the collaborators and supporters too, because we're nothing without the community and the arts community and the people that keep us going. So okay, thanks, Steven. Sorry I went a little bit over time too, but I hope you enjoy your weekend. And
you too.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was an honor. Great.
See you, Steven.
Good.
Bye. One thing I totally forgot to ask Steven during our chat was the reason for the title of his book, Eau Claire Nowhere. So when I asked him via text afterwards, this was his response. Eau Claire Nowhere was chosen as a title for two reasons. First, it refers to Eau Claire Market's reputation as a dead mall with a unique character and aesthetic that was well known but not well visited. Its liminal spaces and emptiness in its final months indistinguishable from the years preceding it. And secondly, it rhymes. Thank you for listening to the first episode of the Nice Photo Podcast. If you have any recommendations or feedback for us, we now have an Instagram, nice.photo.club. I'll put that in the description of the listening platform you're on. The Nice Photo Podcast is hosted and produced by me, Jordon Hon. Our logo is designed by Samuel Secret. Music is by Isaac Haynes. And the show is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, lands that are part of Treaty 6 territory, the traditional territory of the Cree, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, and Saulteaux Anishinaabe or Ojibwe nations. Also, homeland of the Métis people. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.